Hey everyone, good morning. Sorry about that. Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network. Hope you are all doing well. Thank you so much for joining us for our continued coverage of Hurricane Florence as it makes landfall today in North Carolina. Now, as you know, it has weakened to a Category 1, but that does not mean it's still dangerous. Still catastrophic flooding occurring in the Carolinas, and over 150 people were awaiting rescue this morning in New Bern, North Carolina. We're going to take a look at some tweets. We're going to take a look at some videos, live radar, and just different things to give you guys a clearer picture of what's happening. So first, I'm going to pull up a tweet from the city of New Bern to show you the exact situation that happened this morning. So this is from the city of New Bern. It says currently 151 awaiting rescue in New Bern. We have 2 out-of-state FEMA teams here for swift water rescue. More are on the way to help us. We are coming to get you. You may need to move up to the 2nd story or to your attic, but we're coming to get you. Hashtag Florence NC. And also going to give you guys a live look at the radar from windy.com. You can see how Hurricane Florence is just making landfall. And it looks like right now the eye is in Wilmington, North Carolina, right there on the coast. And so we are going to look at some pictures as well. Now remember, if you have any information about Hurricane Florence at all that I may not have shared yet, please send it to me over on Twitter at Alyssa RSBN. And I do have a video to share with you guys just to give you a picture of what's happened. It doesn't really have any sound other than some light music, so I'm going to mute that due to copyright issues. But you can see just how absolutely strong the winds are. There, a BP, actually the roof just flew off. This is in Frying Pan Tower, North Carolina. The picture of the flag that circulated everywhere. And this is in Wilmington, North Carolina. So I saw one of you saying that the Cajun Navy was sharing a lot of videos. So we're going to look for those two. First, I wanted to show you a sweet video. 5th and 6th graders at Wayne Christian School in Goldsboro, North Carolina, sang Eye of the Storm. And this was posted on Facebook on September 11th. That was just absolutely precious. What a sweet way to start our broadcast. So glad that they were able to do that. And I'm going to take a second. We're going to go through this article and then find some more information for you guys. And this is updated from this morning, just less than an hour ago. So Hurricane Florence continued sweeping across parts of the southeastern United States on Friday, making landfall in North Carolina and bringing with it powerful winds along with forecasts warning of a life-threatening storm surge and rainfall. Now, collapsed roofs and other structures were already reported in the Morehead City and New Bern areas of North Carolina. New Bern was particularly hard hit, with reports of more than 100 people stranded in their homes or cars in need of rescue. And the large and dangerous storm is expected to keep battering parts of North and South Carolina on Friday. So kind of looking at a timeline, at 10:10 this morning, water rescue teams prepared for a busy day. In Jacksonville, North Carolina, on Friday morning, the Onslow County Swiftboat EMS crew stationed in a government building actually in Jacksonville, North Carolina, received an update from the county's chief of fire rescue that hurricane force winds would carry on until 1 p.m. By that point, another 2 feet of rain will have fallen. And Jamie Lozano, the Swiftboat team captain, told the crew, "We're going to get busy around 1 o'clock, so rest up because we're probably going to be busy." And shortly after, Lozano got a request to help set up a shelter at a nearby high school. And as the team assembled its emergency gear and prepared to venture into the storm, it stood by for specific calls to pick up people stranded in their homes in need of evacuation. And it's unclear just how many people needed to be brought to safety. Lozano said, "I imagine if they're opening up a shelter, it'll be a lot of trips." So at 9:49 this morning, hours after Hurricane Florence made landfall in North Carolina, federal officials stressed that the danger posed by the storm was far from over. Chris Wamsley of the National Weather Service said, "This is only the beginning. We've already seen a foot of rain just north of Wilmington area. We're still expecting rainfall amounts of 20 to 30 inches, some isolated spots of 40 inches. And also wanted to shout out, I forgot, we got a donation from Zach C, $4.99, and he said Florence fee. Thank you so much for that, Zach. Really, really appreciate you. It'll help us be able to put on more broadcasts just like this, and of course travel to President Trump rallies. We're expected to go to one next week, hopefully. That is not official yet. It's just what we've heard. But we have heard that there is one next week in Phoenix, Arizona. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So also Jeff Byard, the FEMA Associate Administrator, and this is from the Washington Post, if I didn't say that yet, echoed this, and he warned people to expect the slow-moving storm to keep pummeling the Carolinas. He said, "This is not the end of it. 24 to 36 hours remain of a significant threat from heavy rain, heavy surge, not just in North Carolina, but obviously down as we move into South Carolina." And Byard urged people who had not heeded evacuation to remain in place and try to stay safe. And he said federal officials had teams embedded on the state level and described a partnership of multiple government agencies and private businesses prepared and ready to respond. And he said, "We have all we need. We have what we need staged throughout the area, both as far as manpower and teams, as well as commodities, resources, communications." And authorities continued to urge patience and remind people that damage was inevitable as Florence continued its punishing onslaught. And Byard said, we have to set those expectations. This is going to be a duration. Power will be off. Infrastructure will be damaged or destroyed. Homes will be damaged or destroyed. Now, going back a little, we're just going to keep going through this timeline. So at 9 a.m., Wilmington saw the strongest wind gusts in half a century. And the storm may have weakened to a Category 1, but it still packs a powerful punch. Wilmington, a city in southeastern North Carolina, was hit with winds of 105 miles per hour on Friday morning, the strongest in half a century, according to the National Weather Service. And the wind gusts were the most powerful since Hurricane Helen crashed into Wilmington on September 27th, 1958. Now, at 8:46 a.m., more than 100 were rescued from New Bern, according to the governor. So the city of New Bern, North Carolina, was hit hard by Hurricane Florence overnight, with city officials saying shortly before 2:30 a.m. that about 150 people there were awaiting rescue. And Governor Roy Cooper said Friday morning, that more than 100 people in New Bern have been rescued, but there's still more to go. And he said in an interview on Fox and Friends, we're glad to see the sunlight here. And he noted that there was still significant work ahead for the state, saying it was time to move from preparation to determination as residents and officials alike responded to the storm. Now, state transportation officials told residents that major roads in the New Bern area were closed and that secondary roads had not been examined due to the conditions. But they said that due to the flooding, assumed roads are impassable. And it's really cool kind of seeing you guys share your different stories, your different experiences with hurricanes. On YouTube, Cheryl Lynn says, I've been in more hurricanes than you bet. I'm from Louisiana and I'm in North Carolina right now. I was 7 months pregnant when Frederick hit Mobile, Alabama in 79. I was 30 miles from the eye. Wow, definitely scary, but really cool that you are able to share those experiences with all of us. And again, talking about the Cajun Navy, Josue de la Garza said the Cajun Navy rescued thousands of people here in the Houston area after Harvey hit. They are very organized and very good guys and gals. So also kind of continuing to look back. At 8:25 a.m., Florence made landfall. So Hurricane Florence was battering North Carolina this morning, but the storm has only just begun for the region, according to the Capital Weather Gain. So beyond Friday's torrential rain, multi-foot storm surge, and widespread power outages, Florence will continue to batter the region through early next week. And the storm's winds are weakening, but some of its most devastating effects may be yet to come. And through the weekend, the massive storm containing a zone of the tropical storm force winds nearly 400 miles wide will drift inland, engulfing much of South Carolina and southern North Carolina. And the National Weather Service says nearly 5 million people could witness at least 10 inches of rain as the slow-moving storm makes slow forward progress. Now at 8 a.m., there were already 400,000 without power in North Carolina. And North Carolina state officials reported Friday morning that more than 400,000 customers were facing power outages this morning, a number that's likely to increase as the storm's winds continue to tear at trees and power lines. And outage maps provided by Duke Energy showed that more than a quarter of them were concentrated in 2 areas on the state's coast, one around the Wilmington region and the other around Morehead City. Now at 7:39 a.m., Florence made landfall in North Carolina. Hurricane Florence made landfall near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina at 7:15 a.m. on Friday morning, according to the National Hurricane Center. And the storm hit with estimated maximum winds of 90 miles per hour. I know we saw that last night. And in a bulletin on Friday morning, the Hurricane Center reported that the center of the eye of the Hurricane Florence finally makes landfall, following the storm's slow, grinding approach to the southeastern coast. Now going back again, we're kind of doing a backwards timeline thing. So at 6 a.m., Florence eye wall is onshore, center of storm due shortly for landfall near Wilmington as hundreds of thousands lose power. So the National Weather Service reports that slow-moving Hurricane Florence is moving onshore and headed toward Wilmington, North Carolina. And the eye wall of Florence is already onshore, according to the National Hurricane Center. And the storm's center is currently about 10 miles east of Wilmington and about 80 miles north of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and gusts of up to 70 miles per hour have been recorded nearby in Topsail Beach, North Carolina. Now, meanwhile, as many as 321,692 households in North Carolina currently lack power. The state's emergency management department says now this has gone up to nearly 500,000 homes without power. So the already high water levels are expected to rise even higher as the tide comes in, and flash flood warnings continue for Wilmington, Washington, Riverbend, and Vanceboro, North Carolina. Now, at 5 a.m., dire warning was issued as Florence nears landfall. So with Hurricane Florence about to make landfall, the National Hurricane Center predicted only a gradual decrease in the storm's intensity during the day ahead. And the latest update warned it cannot be emphasized enough that the most serious hazard associated with slow-moving Florence is extremely heavy rainfall, which will cause disastrous flooding that will be spreading inland through the weekend. Now, as of 5 a.m., the hurricane was turning westward and traveling at a speed of roughly 6 miles per hour, and over the next 2 to 3 days, it should gradually turn toward the northwest. So back at 4:45 a.m., people were stranded on roofs and actually trapped in cars as the eye wall neared the coast. So after slapping the coast overnight with powerful wind and dumping inches of rain, the outer bands of Hurricane Florence continued to push inland. And at 4 a.m., the National Weather Service released an update on the storm, noting Florence's eye wall was beginning to reach the coast. And the update noted the water levels in Pamlico Sound and Emerald Isle remain elevated. These waters are expected to rise as the tide comes back. A USGA gauge in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, recently recorded 6.6 feet of inundation. Now, on the ground, the situation remains serious as floodwaters continue to swallow up residential areas. And the Craven County Emergency Operations Center has selected has received over 100 calls from people who have been trapped in cars or who have water coming into their homes, according to spokeswoman Amber Parker. And some area residents are currently trapped on roofs waiting for swift rescue teams to arrive as the area continues to experience extreme flooding, storm surge, and high winds. And with a curfew in place until 8 a.m. and many roads in the area closed, people who are experiencing flooding in their homes have little other choice but to wait for help to arrive. And New Bern is actually the largest city in Craven County and has been experiencing serious flooding, but many of the calls also have been coming in from unincorporated areas of the country, and rescue operations are currently underway. So Parker noted that county officials had ordered free transportation to emergency shelters located in Sanford, further inland, and that 107 people had taken the opportunity to get away from the coast, and another 839 people had arrived at shelters located in Craven County by 1 a.m. So the Emergency Operations Center in New Bern, where Parker is based, experienced some flooding earlier in the night, but only in the lobby area. And emergency operations staff were unaffected, but are expecting to see plenty of damage when the sun comes up. And Parker said, everyone's certainly hoping for the best, but we do have a more flooding and storm surge ahead of us. Now at 4:19 a.m., National Weather Service stations in Fort Macon and near the New River Inlet had both recorded gusts topping 100 miles per hour, and ABC reports that over 190,000 people were currently without power at this point. So also looking at 3 a.m., there were wind gusts of 99 miles per hour. At 3 a.m. Friday, the National Hurricane Center released an update on Hurricane Florence showing increased winds battering the North Carolina coast. And according to the latest release at this time, and this was at 3 a.m., a station at Fort Macon, North Carolina, recently documented a sustained wind of 73 miles per hour and a wind gust of 99 miles per hour. And a station at Cape Lookout, North Carolina, registered a sustained wind of 75 miles per hour while also notching a gust of 90 miles per hour. So we're going to keep going back a little bit through this timeline, but before we get there, I want to give you guys a live look at one of the satellites. So you can see it is a Category 1, and how Hurricane Florence has come in so far right there on the coast of North and South Carolina. And going to give you guys a second to look at that, and I will be right back. So as you can see, Hurricane Florence definitely not done moving yet, hitting the coast of North Carolina and the top coast of South Carolina. And also, real quick, I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone over in the chat room. Thank you so much for being here, and huge shout out to those moderators that keep our chat room fun and friendly and make sure it's appropriate and that prepare everyone with that information they need. So wanted to give a few shout outs. Thank you so much, Barbara Brayley, for being here, for being such a fantastic moderator and always making sure everyone knows what they need to know. And also thank you to Jazz Punk and B. Neal and Webster Cal for being in the chat room today. And also going to check and see what members are here. Thank you so much, members, for sponsoring us here on YouTube. It looks like Zach C is here. Welcome, Zach. Hope you are doing well. And I believe a couple others have been in and out as well. And also thank you to some of those regular viewers and contributors that always send me articles and help so much. Thank you to Rick Bulow and the British Patriot. And Candy Smith, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And also want to check over on Facebook and see who's watching, just to give some shout outs over there. And also thank you to Greg Ashe, my dad, for always watching and supporting. So just going to shout out some first names over here on Facebook to welcome everyone. Mary Ann is in the house, and Jeanette, Lisa, Namish is here, Amy, Carol, Marion, and Beverly. And let's see who else is here. Robert is watching, Doug, Dawn, Charlotte, Melanie. Thank you guys so much. Barbara, Sonia, Carla, and Lynn, and Carolyn. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate you. And I'm going to take a second and look at some of those viewer articles that you have already sent in. Really appreciate those. Thank you to Rick Bulow for sending some articles. And this is great. Also got some information from Pager ZDZ over on Twitter, who says the highest rainfall as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time is in Swansboro, North Carolina, with a total of 86 millimeters, followed by Jackson, North Carolina, with 71 millimeters. The lowest total in Belhaven, there the total rainfall is of about 13 millimeters. Thank you very much, Pager, for sharing that with us. Okay, so going to look at some of those articles real quick from Rick Bulow. So first, going to share a satellite view with you guys. This is from the International Space Station as Hurricane Florence is making landfall in North Carolina. And it's just video, no sound here. And also going to look at a couple more articles sent from Rick Bulow. And while I share this with you guys, going to give you another live look at the radar from windy.com. So you can see, since we last watched, looks like the eye kind of decreased in size, but you can see just how huge Hurricane Florence is, how much of North and South Carolina it's taking over. And looking at some information from AccuWeather. So, catastrophic storm surge from Florence prompts hundreds of water rescues in New Bern, North Carolina. And I'll show you guys a video in a second. I know you kept talking about the Cajun Navy. So the Cajun Navy rescues stranded residents in New Bern, North Carolina, as storm surge waters inundate the coastal city. And the city of New Bern's Twitter account stated Friday morning that 2 teams with the Federal Emergency Management Agency were en route to North Carolina to assist with water rescues. And stranded residents are being urged to seek higher ground immediately as they await rescue. So I showed you guys the tweet earlier from the city of New Bern, and it says currently 150 awaiting rescue in New Bern. We have 2 out-of-state FEMA teams here for swift water rescue. More on the way to help us. We're coming to get you. You may need to move up to the 2nd story or to your attic, but we are coming to get you. And New Bern's Public Information Officer, Colleen Roberts, told Fox News, and this is actually a new number, 200 residents have been rescued this far. So the Cajun Navy has assisted local authorities in New Bern with water rescues, having reportedly received 500 calls for help with rescues in the New Bern area. And the New Bern Police Department announced on Twitter that a citywide curfew would take effect from Friday at 7 a.m. until 7 a.m. Saturday. And going to pull this over so you can see that video from the Cajun Navy. Really cool.
Hurricane Florence has diminished only slightly in intensity, but is still a dangerous Category 2 hurricane. The center of the storm is expected to make landfall in southeast North Carolina tonight and early Friday morning. There is still some uncertainty regarding the exact forecast track, but eastern North Carolina is expected to see significant to potentially life-threatening impacts, including extreme storm surge, catastrophic and possibly historic flooding rains, and damaging winds. Florence is expected to slow down as it makes landfall, prolonging these dangerous conditions into Friday and Saturday.
Ocean View Drive, all them houses were cleaned up. The dune's gone again, and it's come through there. It's washing all the way out.
Walden's mission of positive social change is what I live by. That's what I use to go to work. That's what I use with my employees.
And We're also going to take a look at some flooding, the first flooding in North Carolina.
I'm on a barrier island right now in southeast North Carolina, and you can see massive surf already building in here ahead of a slow-moving Hurricane Florence. This area right here is likely going to have a 6 to 9 foot storm surge, maybe even just a little bit higher than that. We have found a concrete fortified structure, and this is where we're going to ride out the storm. And now the tornado threat is on the increase. You can see these individual cells at the very outer bands of Hurricane Florence approaching, and these very easily could have water spouts with them coming ashore, and those would be of the supercell variety. These would not be fair weather water spouts, but these would be capable of causing damage. This is where we're going to be covering the brunt of Hurricane Florence, and we will bring you updates as the worst of Hurricane Florence arrives here on the AccuWeather Network.
While Greg's growing his personal training business, he's also found a way to spend more time with his growing family.
Snap and sort your expenses with QuickBooks and find on average $4,628 in tax savings. QuickBooks, backing you.
Mike Tyson punch to the Carolina coast, and then it's going to have very heavy rains.
This storm threatens life, planned to be without power for days. And this may be a marathon, not a sprint.
A lot of this stuff might be futile if it comes in as hard as they're expecting it.
Just some clothes, a nice suit for work. You never know when you'll need that.
There will be disruptions in our services. The power will go off. Infrastructure will be damaged. Homes will be damaged or destroyed. So again, the time to act is now.
So some great videos from AccuWeather. Those were definitely helpful. And real quick, we are going to go through this. Well, I already shared this with you guys, but just to give you a brief summary. So the City of New Bern's Twitter account stated Friday morning that 2 teams with FEMA were en route to North Carolina to assist with water rescues. And you can see this tweet right here. Currently 150 awaiting rescue in New Bern. We have 2 out-of-state FEMA teams here for swift water rescue. More are on the way to help us. We're coming to get you. You may need to move up to the 2nd story or to your attic, but we are coming to get you. And this is from Florence. And going to give you guys another look at the radar real quick. So also wanted to give you guys a look. This is at Nags Head, North Carolina, and you can see some waves crashing as Hurricane Florence passes over the coast. Doesn't look like this video has any sound, but just want to give you an image of really just how bad the waves are. And we're also going to take a look at Twitter to see what people are saying about Hurricane Florence. So as you know, Hurricane Florence prompted hundreds of rescues after landfall. And this is from Julia Hatton. It says, see video from inside the eye of Hurricane Florence as storm hits North Carolina. We're going to take a look at that. This is the video from inside Calm Eye, as well as defined eye wall approaches their location as Hurricane Florence approaches and hits Wrightsville Beach.
There's the edge of the eye wall right there. Still in the eye, but not for long. You can see the winds are starting to pick up in the distance there. But look at that definition. There's the edge of the eye wall of Hurricane Florence. That's simply amazing. Perfect wall.
And it says the eye of Hurricane Florence, which made landfall as a Category 1 storm in North Carolina on Friday at 7:15 a.m., is expected to stay in the area for another day as it pummels coastal cities in South Carolina. And a video shared on Twitter by National Geographic photographer Mike Thies some 40 minutes later after the storm made landfall gave viewers a look inside what is described as a calm eye. And it's possible to see the edge of the eye wall marked by two distinct shades of white and gray in the sky. And according to the NOAA, the eye wall is the ring around the eye where the highest winds occur. So another clip from NBC News meteorologist Dylan Dreyer shows what it's like on the ground in this particularly dangerous area. In her own words, she was surrounded by wind gusts above 90 miles per hour, sheets of rain, and the resulting flooding and trees toppling. So we're going to take a look at that real quick. And you could see just how bad it is. It looks like to be a parking garage, a flooded parking garage. And Dylan Dreyer says, in the eye wall of Hurricane Florence, wind gusts above 90 miles per hour, sheets of rain and the resulting flooding, trees toppling. We haven't even gotten to the storm surge yet. And so far, Hurricane Florence has hit the North Carolina town of New Bern the hardest. According to CNN, rescuers evacuated 200 people on Friday morning, and some 150 more had to wait. And the storm surge, or the abnormal rise of water generated by the storm, reached 10 feet. So you can see pictures here. I think people just walking through the streets of North Carolina, you can see the water is just up to their waists. And then this picture here, Hurricane Florence hitting Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, and really just disassembling a pier. And Peggy Perry, a New Bern resident, was trapped in her home on Friday morning. She told CNN, in a matter of seconds, my house was flooded up to the waist, and now it is to the chest. We are stuck in the attic. So some more pictures, a video we can take a look at real quick.
Friendship is the person that you trust with your wife and your kids. And it's being able to have the hard conversations and being willing to listen. It's a million little things.
A Million Little Things. A new drama.
This is a guitar, not a gun?
It is a guitar.
Hurricane Florence has weakened to a Category 2 storm, but the National Weather Service warned on Thursday that a storm's category...
It is very colorful.
Hurricane Florence has weakened to a Category 2 storm, but the National Weather Service warned on Thursday that a storm's category does not reflect the amount of possible damage and catastrophic flooding that it can cause. As Florence comes within 200 miles of Wilmington, North Carolina, its winds are reportedly down from 140 to 110 miles per hour, but the National Weather Service predicts that the storm will move more slowly as it approaches the coast and heads inland, with the National Hurricane Center explaining that sustained winds from a Category 2 storm will cause extensive damage. Well-constructed houses could see major roof damage, trees could snap or be uprooted, and complete power outages could last for several weeks. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, and Maryland are all at risk of experiencing the storm, which will arrive late Thursday or early Friday. Officials pleaded with more than 1 million residents in the storm's path to evacuate, with North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper saying on Wednesday, quote, "The time to prepare is almost over. Disaster is at the doorstep." South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster agrees, saying you got to get away from what's coming. He goes on to add, at some point, the rescuers will not be able to rescue you. FEMA tweeted this on Thursday, some stats to be aware of. Just 6 inches of moving water can knock a person down, while 2 feet of moving water can sweep a vehicle away. Very important to be aware of your surroundings and stay clear of floodwater. States of emergency have been declared in the Carolinas, Virginia, Georgia, and Maryland, while a number of schools and universities have canceled classes in anticipation of the storm. If you are in the path of the storm and are not under evacuation, Weather Channel meteorologist Dr. Erica Navarro tells people that having enough supplies is key. Navarro suggests having at least a 2-week supply of food and water for yourself and your pets, as well as flashlights and batteries in case you lose power and water. She also recommends filling prescriptions and your car's gas tank ahead of time if you can, though many gas stations in affected areas have already been seen posting out of service signs. Navarro also suggests taking out cash and having that on hand in case ATMs are down after the storm. And lastly, if you do lose power, she advises not to use candles or open flames for light, as they can cause fires after a storm. Now, early on Thursday, President Donald Trump tweeted about the impending storm, writing, "We are completely ready for Hurricane Florence. As the storm gets even larger and more powerful, be careful." In response to the threat of Hurricane Florence, Airbnb has made its accommodations free for evacuees and disaster relief workers of Hurricane Florence. The home sharing and travel company is offering free lodging in a number of metro areas across North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia through its Open Homes program. You can go to airbnb.com/openhomes for more information on that.
Friendship.
That is definitely cool about Airbnb with that open homes program. Did not know that they did that. As you heard, they said they're opening homes in a number of metro areas for people that are evacuating from the hurricane. And also you can see here just outside, just in New Bern, North Carolina, people are walking through the water and it is up to their waist. Definitely crazy. And this picture has been on a lot of different websites, so you might have seen it yesterday during one of my streams. But it is a road sign and it says park closed due to storm, no trespassing. And the no trespassing is already covered up by water just because of how high those levels are. And this is from people.com. And it also says Florence is expected to drop up to 40 inches of rain in some towns in North and South Carolina, according to today. But by mid-Friday morning, the hurricane had already taken power from more than 50,000 customers across the two states and led to the cancellation of more than 1,300 flights. So a couple more pictures here. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see this vehicle. Water almost up to the top of the wheels, but they are still brave enough to drive through it. And then this is actually Swansboro, North Carolina. The storm is so bad, it's so cloudy and rainy, you cannot even see the sky, but it doesn't look like water levels are too high here right now. And there could also be extremely destructive flash flooding in inland areas because the storm surge is preventing rivers from draining. And Ken Graham, the director of the National Hurricane Center, told CNN on Friday, you're going to have flooding for miles and miles. And another picture, this is Hurricane Florence flooding New Bern, North Carolina. And we saw some of these pictures yesterday. I think this is the man that made a boat out of a metal tub. And Craven County spokeswoman Amber Park actually told ABC News on Friday, I would say certain areas of New Bern are very desperate. There are people that can be trapped in water, in vehicles, on roofs. That's just the situation for anyone. And she added, they just have to wait until the weather conditions permit them to make it here safely. And also, just going to go through some pictures that I have wanted to share with you guys. These are from Reuters.com. So a man actually driving his vehicle around the Union Point Park complex through floodwaters as Hurricane Florence comes ashore in New Bern, North Carolina. And here, tree leaves and branches are seen on the street as Hurricane Florence comes ashore in New Bern as well. And this is a USHC C-130J approaching the edge of Hurricane Florence after a 2.5-hour flight from Savannah Air National Guard Base in Savannah, Georgia. And here you can see just how bad the flooding is. Water from the Neuse River starts flooding houses as Hurricane Florence comes ashore in New Bern, North Carolina. And real quick, going to give you guys another live look at that radar. You can see Hurricane Florence just continuing to move in and really pummeling the coast of North and South Carolina. You can see its projected path where it's expected to go tomorrow at 8 a.m. moving at 65 miles an hour. And then Sunday, way more inland, kind of the upstate South Carolina at 30 miles per hour. And wow, also wanted to shout out, we just received a $50 donation from Jean Cooper. Thank you so much for that, Jean. Really, really appreciate you. And I'm going to also give you guys a look at some different information. It's going to switch from a couple different screens, so you'll be able to see a variety of info screens and radars. So stay tuned. Going to let you look at that for a second, and I will be right back. Hey everyone, thank you so much for being patient. Got a couple new Twitter messages from viewers that I am going to share with you guys. One from a broadcaster that we were actually looking at yesterday with 13 News Now. Going to pull that up for you guys so that you are able to see it. Stephen Graves with 13 News Now tweeted out, just in, evacuation order to be lifted for northern Dare County beaches. Residents can come back Saturday at 7 a.m., visitors Sunday at 7 a.m., and Hatteras Island still remains under evacuation order until further notice as crews assess damage. And also, I am going to do a quick search on Twitter just to continue seeing what people are saying about Hurricane Florence. Now, remember, if you guys have any information at all that you'd like to share with me that I may have missed, may not have said yet, whether it be an article or picture or video, send the link my way on Twitter at Alyssa RSBN. And also want to try to find the most updated tweet from Donald Trump. Looks like he is tweeting a lot from the North Carolina Emergency Management. He's retweeting also from the National Hurricane Center. Wow, just retweeting a lot today. He shared this from the American Red Cross, which says more than 1,500 Red Cross disaster workers are helping Hurricane Florence relief efforts. Some 80 emergency response vehicles and more than 120 trailers of equipment and relief supplies have been deployed. So we're going to take a look at this.
I'm Greta with the American Red Cross. Right now, I'm in a warehouse in North Carolina where Red Cross volunteers are unloading supplies such as food, water, cots, and blankets to help those evacuating Hurricane Florence. With our partners, the Red Cross is preparing to shelter upwards of 100,000 people across North and South Carolina and Virginia. If you need a safe place to stay, download the Red Cross Emergency app to find a shelter location near you.
That's a great video from the Red Cross telling their plans. She said they're housing 100,000 people across North and South Carolina, so they definitely have their work cut out for them. And also, I know that there was a new FEMA briefing this morning, so I'm going to do a quick search for that. While I pull it up, take another look at the live satellite. and going to show you guys some of that FEMA press briefing from this morning.
Everybody, thank you for joining us today for this morning's update on the whole community response to Hurricane Florence. This morning we'll have some brief remarks from some key speakers, and then we'll follow it up with some questions and answers. Of course, we are on the record. I'll just run through who we have. The agencies represented this morning. We have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, FEMA's Office of Response and Recovery, Health and Human Services, U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the American Red Cross, the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters, FEMA's Office of Disability Integration, and of course we will close with a Spanish language update from our FEMA spokesperson Daniel Yargis. Also available for questions, we will have the National Flood Insurance Program and the Environmental Protection Agency. And with that, I will turn it over to Noah for a weather update.
Good morning. My name's Chris Wansley. I work with NOAA's National Weather Service. At around 7:15 this morning, the center of Hurricane Florence made landfall at Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. It is currently a Category 1 hurricane with 90-mile-an-hour winds, moving slowly at 6 miles an hour out of the west. Currently, there is a tornado watch in effect and will likely continue into tonight. Storm surge along the Carolina coast will continue into Saturday and in some areas Sunday night and into Monday morning. Expect higher levels of higher tides during high tide cycles, and the next high tide cycle along the Carolina coast is around noon today, Eastern Time. I do want to emphasize that this is only the beginning. Florence is a very slow mover. We'll continue to trek along the North Carolina and South Carolina coastline for the next 24 to 36 hours. It will not get to Columbia, South Carolina until Sunday midnight morning. We've already seen a foot of rain just north of Wilmington area. We're still expecting rainfall amounts of 20 to 30 inches, some isolated spots of 40 inches. Some of you may remember this is in comparison to September of 1999. The first half of that month of that year, we had Hurricane Dennis and Floyd that produced around the same amount of rainfall that we are anticipating with Florence. The only difference is back then it was within 14 days, and we're looking at the same amount of rainfall in 3 days. Some of the river levels are going to be forecast to exceed the historic levels, and some of those were during Hurricane Floyd. We must emphasize for your own safety, to not drive where water covers the roadways, especially at night. A lot of the flooding is going to start in the river stem levels later on tonight near the coastline and increase Sunday into Monday further inland. Always remember, turn around, don't drown. That's the main thing that we always say. Concern beyond that continues with the track as it moves into the Appalachians Sunday into Monday, and also into the Mid-Atlantic region early next week. Due to the recent rainfall we've had over the last couple of weeks, it will not take that much rainfall for additional flash flooding to occur in these areas. 1 to 3 inches in a couple hours will lead to flash flooding Not as much as the main step rivers as we anticipate over the Carolinas. And finally, the National Hurricane Center's next update will be at 11 o'clock a.m.
Thank you.
Good morning. Neil Jacobs from NOAA. In addition to forecast and decision support from the National Weather Service, NOAA deploys assets to support recovery and response. NOAA's navigation response teams are pre-staging to assist in reopening ports as soon as possible. The National Geodetic Survey has aircraft on standby to support FEMA overflights for affected areas. NOAA's Office of Response and Recovery is also on standby to assist the Coast Guard in any possible chemical or oil spills. The SARSAT system is actively providing distress and specific location information to the Coast Guard. NOAA is working with local emergency managers and industry to help amplify our forecast message, including working through over 8,000 weather-ready nation ambassadors. Although the storm has made landfall, our work is not done. I want to say thank you to our hardworking team, from the response and recovery personnel across NOAA to our reconnaissance crews in the Office of Marine and Aviation Operations. And additionally to the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center employees who've been working 24/7 shifts. Many of these individuals have been sheltered in place for many days. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, my name is Jeff Byard. I'm the Associate Administrator for Response and Recovery. I want to start this morning by, again, thanking the media and our partners. You've done a tremendous job in helping us amplify the message of how serious and the potential deadly this storm is and will continue to be. As our partners at NOAA and the Weather Center just briefed, this is not the end of it. 24 to 36 hours remain of a significant threat. From heavy rain, heavy surge, not just in North Carolina, but obviously down as we move into South Carolina. The message was very much amplified last night again through our media partners. Things like that I witnessed firsthand about, Category 3 to Category 2, Category 2 to Category 1. It was very clear that that's a wind indicator, not a surge and rain indicator, which has not dropped, as you can see. So, again, want to thank your part of being a part of our team as far as getting that message out and to evacuate. We stand ready to support our state and local first responders. There are many areas that are currently, in the heart of the storm, and there are many areas that will be as the day moves through today, tomorrow, and through the weekend. As you know, there are certain areas that where our first responders, it is not safe for them to respond, and we fully support that, by all means. So those citizens that did not heed the evacuation warnings, it's time to stay where you are. Do the best you can to protect yourself and property and your family. We are in constant contact with both North Carolina, South Carolina, and also Virginia. There at the state level, we also have teams that are embedded at our state emergency operations centers and are in contact with our local emergency managers. Both states have activated their National Guard as well as their emergency operations plan. As you know, our National Guard does tremendous work across our nation. And they just do a wonderful job both at the national level and also their state duty of protecting the citizens of their representative states. We've also partnered with our good friends and partners that you see on the stage, but heavily engaged with Department of Defense as we get ready to respond to this. We have what we need. We have what we need staged throughout the area, both as far as manpower and teams, as well as commodities, resources, communications. We've also heavily engaged with our partners at the private sector. Our focus, as you can see, priority is going to be life-saving, but on the monitors, it's also the effort's going to be stabilizing the critical lifelines in a very expedited manner. I have to reiterate, we have to set those expectations. This is going to be a duration. Power will be off. Infrastructure will be damaged or destroyed. Homes will be damaged or destroyed. So we need your help in level setting those expectations to our citizens and to our state and local governments. Heed local warnings. I can't emphasize that enough. Heed your local and state warnings. Protect yourself, protect your families. Don't put our first responders' lives in jeopardy. Do what you need to do as part of the team as well. And that message is to our citizens, both impacted currently and that will be impacted by the by the effects of Hurricane Florence. At this time, I want to turn it over to a good partner and a dear friend, Dr. Bob Catlick with the Health and Human Services.
Thanks a lot,
Dr.
Jack.
Catlick, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Bob Cadlick with the Health and Human Services. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response. To Jeff's point, we've been working closely with FEMA and our state and local partners well before the storm. Secretary Azar spoke to the governors, and I've spoken to the state health officials to know what resources are in place to assist them to save lives in the event of the worst case scenario. We've also been working very closely to declare public health emergencies in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia that will ease the ability for individuals as well as hospitals to take care of folks affected by this storm. We've deployed more than 500 personnel. These are Public Health Commission Corps officers who are currently working in medical shelters around the region, assisting local communities, as well as several hundred disaster medical assistant teams who are positioned around the region to respond, if necessary, should there be a requirement to assist people who have specific health needs. We've worked extensively before the storm with state and local officials identifying individuals who are particularly vulnerable during events like this, people who are dependent on electrical equipment such as ventilators, or people who have requirements for dialysis, to ensure that we know where they live and we can provide them services before the storm arrives as well as during the storm. Lastly, I just want to make a point that Secretary Azar has mobilized the entire Department of HHS, not only the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, but the Centers for Disease Control, CMS, and HRSA to be ready to assist our state and local partners to save lives and help those communities at risk. Thank you very much, and now I'll turn over to the Coast Guard.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. My name's Rear Admiral Meredith Austin with the Coast Guard. The safety of the people in the hurricane's path, as well as our own members and their families, remain our top priority, and we're continuing to work in close concert with FEMA, Army Corps, and our other federal, state, local, and private sector partners. We have Coast Guard personnel embedded with FEMA, DoD, and state emergency management agencies to enable a coordinated whole-of-government response. The Coast Guard has positioned 40 aircraft immediately outside the storm's path, which is about 20% of the Coast Guard's total aviation assets, to be ready to begin search and rescue operations as soon as it is safe to do so. In addition, we have shallow water response boat teams and deployable specialized forces to provide law enforcement, maritime security, as well as oil and hazardous materials response teams to come in immediately once the storm passes. We have over 7,100 Coast Guard members involved in the response so far and are ready to flow in more resources and assets when needed. The ports of Wilmington and Morehead City in North Carolina and the Port of Virginia remain closed at this time. The Coast Guard and Army Corps, NOAA, and other port partners are prepared to restore port operations with assets that have already been pre-staged as soon as it is possible once the storm passes and it is safe to do so. For those of you in the path of the storm, we continue to urge you to stay off the water, as our SAR assets, as I mentioned before, are still degraded or unavailable until the winds die down to a safe level. And one other thing is that social media is a poor distress calling system for a number of reasons. We can't stress strongly enough that people in distress need to call 911 if able to do so. Some of the lessons we learned and incorporated during last year's hurricanes is the use of aggregate social media to find hotspots to know where to vector in resources. However, for one-on-one rescuing of personnel, it's not efficient enough, so please, we urge you to use 911 if possible. And finally, once the storm is passed, hazards may still be present. Stay in a safe location while the Coast Guard and other state and local authorities assess damage and disperse additional resources. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. My name is Ray Alexander. I'm from the headquarters, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm the Director of Contingency Operations. I'm here today to talk about the Corps' preparedness to respond under Emergency Support Function 3, Stafford Act, in support of FEMA and our state and local partners. But first, I'd like to mention the support the Department of Defense is providing, as Mr. Byard highlighted. The Department of Defense and Army have deployed over 9,700 personnel. That's active and reserve component, and Department of the Army, Department of Defense civilians. In addition, key equipment has been positioned in the area. Vehicles capable of transiting high water, fixed-wing aircraft, rotary wing, both light and heavy helicopters have been in position, in addition to amphibious vessels that are in the Army's inventory. To date, the Department of Defense has received over 25 mission assignments at $81 million. As far as the Corps is concerned, the Corps is in position and prepared to respond now. All our key leaders are located within the Carolinas. Today, our Deputy Commanding General for Civil Emergency Operations, Major General Spellman, is working his way to North Carolina, where he will link up with our Wilmington District Commander, Colonel Rob Clark, and they will engage at the State Emergency Operations Center and meet with key federal, state, local, other federal agency partners. In addition, Brigadier General Diana Holland from our South Atlantic Division, she will be forward as well in both South and North Carolina today. To date, the Corps has over 15 mission assignments, $5.3 million, and additionally over $1.3 million of our own flood control coastal emergency funds that allow us to prepare for and respond to flooding. In terms of missions that we expect to execute, temporary power is probably job number one we anticipate. And with that, we have our specialized power planning and response teams in position in both North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia if needed. We're there with our 249th Engineer Battalion, Prime Power, and also augmented by contractors who will actually assist us in doing assessments and installing generators for critical infrastructure where needed. We are prepared to do infrastructure assessments of critical facilities in collaboration with EPA. Assessments on water or wastewater will be conducted. And then we're prepared to conduct other missions as assigned, debris, housing, temporary roofing, missions that we normally do in these types of events. Additionally, we have flood fight teams in position in the area and material to mitigate areas that we know that are going to flood or be able to quickly respond areas where flooding is occurring. As far as dams are concerned, I think I briefed yesterday, the Corps has 5 dams in Virginia and North Carolina. All those dams have sufficient capacity to receive the amount of rainfall based upon the prediction and also the projected path of the storm. And then there are other federal dams, specifically dams on Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fort Jackson, South Carolina. We have personnel there on both garrisons prepared to offer technical subject matter expertise and respond if necessary. We do not anticipate any of these dams failing of any kind or dangers downriver. And then there are state and local dams and private sector dams as well. We'll be monitoring the status of those dams, but those are actually controlled and managed, again, by state, local governments. And then navigation, as the Admiral said, we're working closely with NOAA and the U.S. Coast Guard. Our survey vessels, our dredges, they're in safe harbor now. But as soon as the storm passes and the sea state allows, we'll be working with our partners to ensure that the ports, Morehead City, Wilmington, are open as soon as possible, Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway, and key federal inlets as well. Lastly, I would say some things that we are planning for. Potentials are North Carolina 12, which runs the length of the Outer Banks. It's had a history of being breached at times. We're doing planning in the event there's a breach, and we're receiving assignment to repair that breach. We're looking for the potential debris mission, however, debris in the form of livestock, specifically hogs in eastern Carolina. There is a history of a large number of livestock being killed as a result of flooding in these storms. So we're prepared to do that. We are fully prepared for whatever may come. Again, our leaders are forward, and thank you.
I'm Charlie English with the American Red Cross, and I'd like to highlight a family reunification website that we operate in case you have been separated from your family, or if you're concerned about whether your family is okay or not. And you can get to that Safe and Well website at redcross.org, and under the Get Help tab, it will direct you to where you can post a message about being safe and well in a certain location. I'd also like to mention and ask for your consideration in giving blood. We've had to cancel over 130 blood drives in the impacted area, and you may be at home wanting to know what can you do to help. That's how you can help. So if you're in a non-impacted area, we would appreciate your consideration in giving blood. I'd also like to ask, we know we're going to need volunteers. It's going to take a lot of people to help with the post-impact sheltering and distribution of emergency supplies that we partner with government partners and other faith-based organizations to operate. But we don't want you just to respond to these scenes. There needs to be some training, so we would appreciate if you would register at redcross.org and any number of other fine private nonprofit organizations that you can volunteer with. We can get you trained up real quick and put you to work. And at this point, and I would say we continue, of course, to transition resources to the area of impact so that we are ready to do the post-impact sheltering and taking care of people. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our friends with the Office of Disability Integration with FEMA.
Good morning. Today, FEMA's Office of Disability Integration and Coordination remains focused on life safety for people with disabilities who've been impacted by Florence. Together with the Red Cross and HHS, we're watching New Bern very closely because that county has the highest population of people with disabilities in the impacted areas. North Carolina has requested 2 EMAC FAST teams. FAST teams are basically teams that go in to assess shelters to ensure that they can meet the needs of people with disabilities who are going to be there. They're using what's called the CMIST protocol, where they assess communication, maintaining health, independence, services and support, and transportation to ensure that the shelters have the capacity to serve the folks that with disabilities that will be staying there. The Office of Disability Integration and Coordination has deployed disability integration advisors to support Region 4, as well as the states of North and South Carolina. These disability integration advisors are on the ground to advise senior leadership on, to ensure decisions being made will consider the needs of and the impact on survivors with disabilities who've been impacted by Florence. The Office of Disability Integration and Coordination is leaning forward. We are not waiting for response to be over before we start looking at recovery. We are bringing together representatives from FEMA's Individual Assistance Branch, from the Office of Disability Integration and Coordination, and our partners at the Red Cross to plan for the best way to transition people with disabilities out of the shelters and back into independent living in their communities. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Greg Forrester. I'm with the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. We're the largest association of disaster nonprofits in the nation. We're made up of 68 national member organizations, and then we have an organization in every state and territory. For the last 4 days, we've been working alongside of FEMA and State Emergency Management to make sure that our organizations are staged and ready to respond as soon as the storm clears. What we are is members of each and every community that's been disaster affected. 75% of our members are faith-based organizations with locations in each community across the nation. Right now, we're waiting for the storm to clear, but many of our organizations like Red Cross, Salvation Army, Southern Baptist Disaster Response are already engaged in housing and feeding missions for those that are sheltering. When the storm clears, our organizations will then stand up to go ahead and further that mission. We will also be engaged in cleanup work and other responses as needed. Right now, we're concentrating on volunteering and donations. We know that this nation is one that volunteers very readily. sometimes those volunteers come in a form that we can't utilize them right away. So what we're asking for is go to our website, www.nvoad.org. We have a means by which you can go ahead and register to volunteer in each state that's been disaster affected. We also have a donations portal that's on there. We ask that for those donations, we're looking at just corporate in-kind donations to come through for things that we know are going to be needed. The best donation is cash. What we have found is as many disasters, things arrive into the disaster zone, we end up spending much more time working on donations than we do actually working with survivors. And so we ask that you don't do any clothing drives or any of those kinds of things at this point in time. We will let you know as far as what the needs are in the field. What we do know is commodities have been staged extremely well with FEMA and with our state emergency management partners. We are engaged and embedded within every state emergency management office and also here at FEMA at headquarters. Again, looking to volunteer, go to the website. As Mr. English stated, the Red Cross is an excellent organization to go ahead and volunteer with. You can go to our website and find all the other organizations on how you can affiliate with them so that you are prepared to respond in a coordinated way as we bring response and recovery to these disaster-affected communities. Thank you.
Hola, buenos días. Soy Daniel Yarguez, portavoz de FEMA. Queremos darle una actualización en español. La tormenta se movilizó en el norte de Carolina esta mañana a las 7 de la mañana con vientos de 90 millas por hora más o menos.
One follow-up for time considerations.
All right, yes, ma'am.
From Courts. I think this might be a question for Rear Admiral Austin, but
Great.
There's a lot of social media, crowdsourced rescue websites and things. Many of them sprang up during Hurricane Harvey. They sometimes got there before the first responders could. These are registering people to do rescues again. I wonder if you could tell us about whether you think they're safe or effective, or you would recommend that people call out to them if 911 isn't working for them? And do they make your job harder to do in the long run?
I mean, social media, I mean, it's the way a lot of people communicate. What we discovered last year, though, was that using social media as a tool to get calls for help to the people who are actually responding is a little problematic because it's not secure. People's privacy is not necessarily considered. Unfortunately, we found that some unscrupulous people might take advantage of people because people now know that they're in a disaster area, and that they're vulnerable. So if that's the only way that people can reach because they don't have phone for whatever reason or they don't have electricity, then if people are able to call out to social media, friends see that or others see that, if they can then call 911 just to make sure it gets into the system, because it might not necessarily be the Coast Guard that's going to be the ones responding. If it goes to a 911 center, that call center is able to then dispatch the most appropriate and the closest and available asset to actually do that rescue. So that's why we, I understand people will sometimes use social media, but it's not very efficient in order for us to make sure that we get to the right people who are actually in distress. But if that's the only method they have, if people who see those messages can then contact 911, then we could be sure that they're entered into the system so we're able to actually see that they're in need and we're able to rescue them.
And what about some of these civilian rescue networks? There's something called crowdsourced rescue, and right now they're registering people who want to do rescues. Is that effective? Do they get in your way? I don't know. Sure.
Let me, to complement what the Admiral was saying, first and foremost, we don't want to have first responders in danger, and we don't want to have citizens in danger. Very admirable that our citizens, that's exactly what we've asked to do. We saw that in Harvey with the wonderful work that the Cajun Navy has done with neighbors helping neighbors. So, what we've done in conjunction with the Coast Guard and others, we also utilize crowdsourcing. We don't only utilize that from an external affairs part, we've operationalized our crowdsourcing capabilities within FEMA. And what does that mean? It means that we have those individuals on our operations floor, and what they've been able to do and what they will continue to do is look where needs are and make sure that we're communicating those pockets down. Again, I want to reiterate, we're not a 911. We're not designed to be a 911 service, nor should the FEMA at the headquarters level in Washington, D.C. be utilized as a 911 service. I don't think our locals on the coast would want D.C. Dispatching those 911 services. But what we are able to do with that is identify where those pockets are and make sure that we've got and can get that down not only to the Coast Guard but to our urban search and rescue teams that are embedded with our local first responders. And you know, these are the best of the best. They train for this. You know, water can look, you know, one way it's very deceiving. So, you know, the last thing that we want to do is have, you know, citizens helping citizens, and then that compound what our first responders have to go do. So, you know, there's a lot of that. Social media has been a you know, excellent tool. And we're incorporating that as part, not just at the federal level, but also in our state and local levels to understand that. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us a number for how many SWIFT current search and rescue teams you have positioned, ready to help? It seems like, you know, rising water is going to be the main concern of the storm.
Yes, ma'am. That's a good question. We have over 1,100 federal urban search and rescue personnel dispatched throughout the 2 states, but that's just one resource. Our National Guards, our Department of Defense, we have high water vehicles and teams that are ready to go that can do water rescue. There's a big difference between, as you well know, swift water and just high water. So we have teams that can do that. We have our partners at the Coast Guard who lead that federal effort for coordination effort. Think about the amount of coordination it takes to have people on the water doing rescues, also wind safe to do so. Our helicopters, our air rescues, not just from the Coast Guard through National Guard and others. And you know, again, the last thing we want to see is first responders' lives in danger trying to go save lives. So the Coast Guard heads that effort up. So we have a lot of resources available. That's not just the urban search and rescue teams. And when safe to do so, we'll do so. But we have adequate amount. We've really, you know, put these teams out there. They're not only at the state level, they're all the way down to the local level. And this is what they do. These are firefighters, you know, by day, so they understand the language of firefighters. And when we put them together, it's a very successful program. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I'm Colleen Long from AP.
Yes, ma'am.
So, related to social media, I wanted to ask about the rumor page, the FEMA's rumor page, and sort of, are there any particular rumors that are, there's some on the website, but I wondered if this was the first time that had been created specifically for a natural disaster and to quash rumors. And then also, is there anything specific you wanted to make sure people didn't think were true? This morning, my husband and I were talking about sharks in the, you know, in the water and stuff like that.
Well, there are sharks in the water. That's not a rumor, but you know, I don't think we have a Sharknado effect or anything like that. You know, we're human, and we're human in a disaster. Rumors are going to be out there. People are going to see things that, you know, your adrenaline gets going. You know, there's a number of things that do that. We do have the rumor page established at FEMA. A lot of our states and locals do the same thing. We want to get accurate information to our public. I mean, that's very, very important. And rumors, you know, for the sake of rumors, they don't help things. That's not being a team player. You know, that's just clouding, you know, a bandwidth that we need to cut through additional, you know, really BS to get through. And that's not needed. So, but, you know, we also want information as much as we want to pass it. So I would encourage, you know, you to visit our rumor page on our website and others. But, you know, rumors are going to happen. We understand that. I've been through a lot of disasters, as many of my partners on the stage and downrange have, and we know that's going to happen. I'll come back to you. Yes, ma'am.
Eva McKen, Spectrum News. I'm seeing comparisons, because this is a slow-moving weather event, to what happened in Houston. And I'm wondering, are those comparisons accurate? And if so, what did you learn from that event that is helping you prepare for this? I know that one specific problem last year is when people were trapped and they would call, they would be classified as needing a water rescue, but maybe they were in a really dire situation,
yes,
but they were categorized with everyone else that needed to be in a water rescue. How have you adapted to address those needs?
You know, that is a good question to illustrate what we said before, that no two disasters are alike. The rain totals may be similar, but the terrains definitely different from Houston, a very, as you know, fourth largest urban center in our country, to the coastline and inland areas of North and South Carolina that is very populated but sparsely populated. It's not as urbanized, so there's just a different makeup as that. What I hope we've learned is my partner, Mr. Merstead, who manages our national flood insurance program. I hope people have bought flood insurance. Because you're going to need it for this event, and it is going to flood. As far as how individuals are classified, that's a local and state question. We want to make sure that we've got the resources that they may need to support those rescues. Yes, ma'am.
Question for Dr. Cadlick. What are some of the hazards that people currently in the impacted zone or people returning to the area should be keeping in mind? I know we're a couple of days away from people being able to return, maybe for people who are there.
Sure, a lot of people suffer a lot of injuries as a result in the cleanup that happens during storms, after storms, from fallen trees. There's always the risk of electrical power, electrocutions as a result of down power lines. So the key thing is the individuals just really need to be cautious about how they re-entered an area, whether the officials have given them clearance to do so. And then, again, people who want to do it themselves need to make sure they have the proper equipment and safety equipment to ensure that they don't get hurt or injured. So those are very commonly the kinds of injuries. Longer term, there's always the risk of, let's say, fungal growths or something in hot, humid areas that can cause respiratory or exacerbation of respiratory illnesses. But there are a whole variety of injuries that can happen. I guess the key thing here is for people to kind of monitor themselves, their families, watch what they're doing, and listen to the officials in terms of when it's safe to return to their homes and to their local areas.
All right. Any additional questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Ben Kessling from the Wall Street Journal. Can
Yes,
you just give a quick, another quick statistical update and on casualties, deaths, how many people, just sort of a top line numbers of people affected at this point?
Right. I wouldn't. I don't have any verified casualties. That would be best. A question for our state and local partners. As you know, FEMA. We don't verify casualties when it comes to that. But it's early. Hopefully. We prevent as many as we can through your good work of getting that message of evacuation out there. But that's a question that I would shift down to both North and South Carolina for there.
Okay, and then a separate question. I know CBP officers are doing law enforcement assistance in the affected areas. I think ICE officials are also down there. Has there been a blanket order come down from DHS, Justice Department, etc., that says that undocumented immigrants will not be arrested, will not be taken into custody, that they don't have to worry about coming to shelters? At what level have those directives been given, if they have been?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any directives in either way. I can speak on the authorities that FEMA has, and we, under our Stafford Act, we can provide that immediate assistance to any human that needs it.
So is there, that means that there are no guarantees that undocumented immigrants will not be taken into custody, arrested, face deportation if they go to
I'm not going to say, I'm not going to use the terminology guarantee. What I'm going to say is we're going to help any human that needs help in this situation. For your specific questions, that would be best directed to the department, or we can get with external affairs and do that, because I don't want to speak on orders, directives that I've not seen.
So there's no kind of cross-departmental coordination on this.
The cross-departmental coordination on this is about saving lives for Florence, and there's a good cross-department coordination. We are, and not just cross-department, as you can see up here, cross-agency. So that's our focus. And again, any other questions on that, I would ask that you ask for the.
That's understandable. The cross-department focus is to save lives. There's also people out there who are concerned that if they go.
If you have a need, let me make this clear. If you have a need or your life's in danger, please seek help. And you're a human being, please seek help.
But FEMA can't say that they won't be taken into custody.
FEMA does not take anybody into custody. So did I have any other questions? I think I've answered that one pretty well. So, anybody got anything else? Thank you again for your voice. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We will have an additional update today telephonically at 3:15, and we do anticipate keeping this pace through the weekend with a 9:15 morning brief. Thank you all for your support. As always, download the FEMA app and stay updated with information, and please stay safe.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into that, a very good and informative FEMA press briefing. And I'm going to share some more information with you guys that I have, but remember, if there's anything else you have that I haven't shared yet, please send it my way on Twitter at Alyssa RSBN. That would be super appreciated. Once again, that is at Alyssa RSBN. If you have any pictures, videos, articles that I may have missed, please send them my way. And also, you can see the radars right here on my right. You can see the different radars, different wind speeds. We're going to take a look real quick at our live track info screen. So you can see some current winds on Wallops Island, Melfa, 17 miles per hour with 22 mile per hour gusts, and Tanger Island, and then Elizabeth City, 18 mile per hour winds and 30 mile per hour gusts. Then in the Outer Banks in Manteo, 16 mile per hour winds, 23 mile per hour gusts. And you can see that radar just circling around as well. And right now it is 12:39 p.m. Eastern time, and so it's kind of giving you a look, projecting into Friday, where they are expecting Hurricane Florence to travel. And winds are currently at 80 miles per hour, and it is 25 miles off the coast of North Carolina. And getting some more information in right now about the Cajun Navy, which we just heard FEMA talking about, and I know many of you have been talking about them this morning. So shout out to the British Patriot. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And while I go through this, and this is from ABC 30, going to give you another look at the radar from windy.com, a really cool interactive radar website. So like I said, this is from ABC 30. So the Cajun Navy came to the aid of 160 people in North Carolina Friday morning, many of whom had to be rescued from the roofs of their cars after they were stranded while trying to drive away from the devastation of Hurricane Florence. And Todd Terrell, the founder of the Cajun Navy, told ABC News the tide came up really strong, 5 to 8 feet, they're saying, and a lot of the people did not get out, got stuck in conditions on the roads. He said, so a lot of people were rescuing from the tops of their vehicles. Now, the Cajun Navy is actually an informal volunteer group, and it's comprised mainly of private boat owners who assist in search and rescue efforts. And the organization was actually formed after Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana back in 2005. So around 310 people from 9 different states are on the ground in New Bern, North Carolina, providing resources and manpower to first responders, Terrell said, and some have traveled hundreds of miles to help in any way they can, including getting people out with air mattresses when boats cannot be used. And Terrell said the winds were so high we couldn't get the boats in there because the winds were toppling them and it was making it unsafe for us. So we had to use a couple of air mattresses and float people out. And volunteers actually encountered another problem, that the current was way stronger in this one, and the water came up like in minutes. Terrell said 2 to 3 feet of water came up within minutes. Now, Taylor Fontenot, a roofer in Sugar Land, Texas, joined the Cajun Navy last year after Hurricane Harvey hit the Lone Star State in August 2017. And he traveled to the Florida Keys after Hurricane Irma ravaged the islands in September 2017 and flew to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria hit just weeks later. So on Wednesday, Fontenot packed up diving gear, a rappelling harness, first aid supplies, a chainsaw, and Houston, Texas football cleats to bring with him to the Carolinas. And the volunteers hope to keep the hurricane a zero casualty event, Fontenot said. So switching back over, I am going to wrap it up for now, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all of the moderators over on Facebook, on YouTube, and on our website as well. Racolp, Common Sense, Glenn O. Over on YouTube, B. Neal, Barbara Braley, Roger Vega. Thank you guys so much for being here. And of course, Guinevere and members Zoom, and Zach C. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and definitely make sure to tune in for more afternoon and evening updates as we bring you more information about Hurricane Florence and really just the destruction it's causing in the Carolinas and on the East Coast. Thank you guys so much for joining, and once again, from Right Side Broadcasting Network, I'm Alyssa Ashe. See you soon.